Hello, everybody. Excited to introduce you to Austin Gallagher, the founder of beneaththewaves.org. And they do a lot of amazing work around the world with sharks and shark habitats, tracking shark movements, and a lot of work in the ocean, of which sharks play an integral role with maintaining ocean life and what goes on there. So he's done some incredible work. What he's actually here to talk about today, though, is ending the effects of climate change by 2050, which is going to be incredible. I'm looking forward to hearing some really actionable items here that we can do. And Austin, I'll let you take it away from here.
Fantastic. Okay. Hi, everybody. So nice to meet you. I want to thank Tim and the team from the summit for inviting me to present here. This is really timely and just so needed right now. And it's actually funny, I was telling Tim right before he went back on that I was supposed to be in Yellowstone National Park right now giving this talk from one of our lodges where we were going to be camping. So there might have been some Wi-Fi anxiety over that, but we actually ended up not going on the trip. And it's a bit ironic that I'm going to be talking a little bit today about climate change. And we will get to the sharks, don't worry. I will explain why there's a shark here, and we'll make an appearance later in the talk as well. But it's a bit ironic, I think, that, talking about climate change, because we canceled our trip to Yellowstone because of the wildfires in the west of our country here in the United States, creating pretty low air quality. So turns out it actually wasn't as bad as we thought it was going to be, but we have a little one-year-old daughter, so we were being a little careful there. But again, really, very much looking forward to speaking to everybody today about how we can end the effects of climate change by 2050. And the year 2050 is really just right around the corner. And it's a number that's been tossed around, used a lot, discussed quite a bit by some of the world's leading scientists, conservationists recently, as it relates to this is kind of a really important milestone for a lot of different things. One of my close scientific colleagues, his name is Dr. Carlos Duarte. He recently published a paper in Nature saying that we can restore our oceans to abundance and fix a lot of these problems by 2050. It is possible. It was an incredible beacon of light, I think, in regards to positivity. We're so used to the doom and gloom scenarios when it comes to environmental conservation. And that's exactly where I come in. So like Tim said at the beginning, I am a marine biologist and I run a nonprofit organization that's globally activated, working at the intersection of marine biology, policy, entrepreneurship, and media. A big focus of what we do at Beneath the Waves is working on some of the most iconic and threatened species on our planet, like sharks. There's a picture of a tiger shark here that I met this shark and I made this photo probably back in 2011. And believe it or not, the tie between something like sharks and climate change is actually not that hard of a case to make. And I can get into that a little bit later today. So a big thing that I've been doing for the last 10 plus years of my life is studying these incredible animals. And one of the reasons why, studying oceans is so important is because it really is the lifeline of our planet. Humans rely on the ocean for so many things, from 60% of the global population relying as a protein source. It regulates our weather patterns. Oxygen, a significant proportion of the oxygen we breathe comes from the ocean. And of course, it regulates our climate. So sharks are, really mind-blowing animals. And we always think about Shark Week in these, Hollywood movies and all these things. They're really quite endangered animals. And one of the things that we do, and other folks as well, is we want to study their habitat use, where they're going, what areas are most important for conservation. Sharks are very threatened. It's actually been estimated that about 100 million sharks per year are killed for their fins. And what we've really been doing is studying how they use this planet. And sharks, like other ocean animals, are some of the most incredible athletes on our planet. These are just 4 graphs that I think really demonstrate the global scale of how ocean animals use our planet. You see shearwaters on the top left here. These are all satellite tracks, by the way. So something that I do and lots of other folks like myself, we put transmitters on these animals and we can track their movements from space. We have Earth orbiting satellites that can connect to these animals, and the animals go to some of the most important habitats in the world naturally. And we're just picking up momentum in terms of our ability to actually track them. So whether it's a small little bird like a shearwater here that leaves from Alaska and makes a straight no stop migration down to New Zealand. Or you're talking about leatherback sea turtles crossing the Atlantic Ocean. We know bluefin tuna connect San Francisco and Tokyo and back, individual sharks. That's pretty incredible. That tuna was named Terry. And then, my favorite, of course, in the bottom right, this is a white shark. These are not all my studies, by the way. These are just accumulated from others working in the space for the last 10, 15 years. This is a white shark that was named Nicole. This is in 2005, just 15 years ago. This was the first ever kind of long distance migration for a white shark, and it connected, two continents, 11,000 miles. So, Africa and Australia, which is, pretty incredible. So these animals really are the original Olympic athletes, and they're moving through these environments. And we have a rapidly changing planet now, which a lot of that is due to climate change. And these animals are experiencing all of those things, and they're adapting. Sometimes they're not adapting, but they're experiencing all these changes. As it relates to sharks, the main reason why we've wanted to study them is to really curb the overfishing. Sharks are very slow growing. They're like humans. They take a long time to reach maturity. These are shark fins that are, oftentimes cut off of the animals and used, in certain countries for a delicacy of soup. And we really want to try and find those hot spots and protect them. So it's really been focused on protecting large expanses of the ocean. Also creates a buffer for things like climate change. So hopefully, with that little brief introduction there to sharks and other ocean-going animals, hopefully I've convinced you that these animals are using our planet a lot, and a lot at a much larger scale than we are. And this is just such an incredible photo. And we do live on a blue planet, by the way. You can see most of those storm patterns and clouds, they're occurring over the blue part of this incredible marble that's hurtling through space while we're on it, going about our daily lives. So quite a few of us on the planet, getting close to 8 billion. And I always like to say that we study sharks and we track these animals and we're trying to protect them. Really what we're doing is we're trying to understand how we can coexist with this planet. And we're using sharks as sort of the storyteller for that. I really feel like learning how we can coexist with our planet is probably the greatest question of our time. And it's really focused on how can we live sustainably with our planet. That's really what it's all about. And climate change is by far the most important driver and solution that we need to really solve in order to accomplish that goal. We know from decades now what we've been doing. We would not be where we are today doing a live stream over the internet and connecting with thousands of people in real time without the advent of technology. And we would never have been able to have technology without the advent of industrialization and being able to communicate and connect across this big blue planet. And there are consequences to every action. And like I said, we wouldn't be able to get here without what we see here, which is, industrialization. But over the last 50, 60 years plus, really since the 1950s or 60s, everything's really scaled. And this has resulted in greenhouse gases, carbon dioxide getting trapped in our atmosphere. And it creates a compounding effect on the natural ups and downs of our climate. That's pretty much as far as I'm going to go in terms of what climate change is. I think it's fairly well established, but this is what we're experiencing now is a significant acceleration on a normal pattern, and it's due to humans. And we've been seeing effects of this for a long time now. The most iconic and obvious effects of this are something that's quite far away from most of us, places where people don't live, in the poles of our planet, the Arctic and the Antarctic regions. We're classic examples. We have sea ice melting and we have glaciers melting, and we've all seen the photos of the polar bears sitting out there saying, "Oh God, what is happening right now? I should not be here." So it's really interesting to see what has happened in the climate change discussions, and even speaking from my own perspective, seeing how this has been affected by things like politics, my own family members and friends, and the overall dialogue on climate change, I think has really changed quite dramatically in the last year or two. Very, very recent, and I think that we're seeing a much more positive, I don't know if people are much more comfortable with understanding what this is now, and not all of us necessarily feel like we're being taught, but now people are actually seeing it for themselves. So today I wanted to talk to everybody here about how can we really think about climate change and how can we make a difference and how can each of us individually contribute to a positive future on our planet, a positive, hopefully reduced effects of climate change. And I was thinking about this, and we've probably all heard snippets here and there of, well, we can go recycle and do these things. I agree, and we will kind of talk about that a little bit later, but I think it kind of boils down to three kind of principles that I really would love everybody to really just think about. Because climate change, as esoteric as it may have been in the past, or as abstract as it might be still for some folks out there, this is an environmental, I actually wouldn't even call it an environmental issue. This is a social, cultural, human issue that is actually one that we can fix on an individual level, more so than most other environmental or even social causes. If we want to, reduce poverty, we can donate or we can send meals to someone. Sure, of course, but it might be hard to get those over to a place that really needs it, like in sub-Saharan Africa. If we want to, bring whales back from the brink of extinction, which we have done, by the way, and that's a very positive story. Whales have recovered from hundreds of years of exploitation. We used to whale these animals and fish them out at a global scale just a few hundred years ago. They've recovered. But how can an individual person who's watching this live stream, how can I save whales? That's a tough one. Beyond just donating to a cause that's actually going to go do the work. Climate change, we actually have the power, believe it or not, regardless of political beliefs, regardless of where you live, how much you make. I really do believe that we have the opportunity to contribute at an individual level more than anything else. It comes down to three things: acceptance. Maybe that's a harsh word for some folks, but acceptance, ownership, and action. So acceptance, this is the positive conference here. So we're not going to stay too far into the doom and gloom scenario here at all. But this is an image that we're seeing a lot right now, especially in the last few weeks, accepting the fact that this is here. The effects of climate change are now much more clear than they've ever been. We have the wildfires that have been, burning up, unfortunately, tragically, large portions of California and a lot of the western states. Again, yes, wildfires happen naturally, and actually they're an important component of the overall ecosystem every year, but climate patterns are shifting. Warming temperatures have made these storms wildfires more intense, and the effects of them lasting longer, and the wind has shifted and all of that. So without a doubt, this is related to climate. We're seeing that as well. Again, other types of images. We're seeing sea level rise, which is another very kind of nasty cousin of climate change. Where's all this melting water going to go from all these, all the water that's trapped up in this ice? Where's that going to go? Well, it's going to flow and it's going to rise up. That's about as deep as I'll get on sea level rise. But we see this all the time now. I used to live in Miami. My sister lives there now, and her car died because they had a huge storm and her car was parked in Miami Beach just hanging out with a friend. And just in a few hours of torrential rain, her car was up to the windows in water. So this is also something that we're seeing quite a bit. So I think that accepting that this is something that we can't ignore anymore, that's the number one thing that we need to do. And you don't have to stay glued to the news to see the same story over and over again. And I hope that none of these things have affected any of the listeners individually. That my thoughts go out to those folks who may have lost homes or anything from these terrible storms or hurricanes. I do a lot of work in the Bahamas, and I'm right in Hurricane Alley there. And a lot of my colleagues and friends live there. So I definitely understand that can be really, really tough. And those folks have certainly accepted it. So that's the first thing, is acceptance. And the next one, I think, is ownership. We're all driving here on this planet. We're all moving a car, and you can choose how you want to drive, what your driving style is going to be. Are you going to be going fast, slow? Do you get off a lot? What kind of car are you going to drive? How many people do you drive with? It's kind of an interesting analogy or metaphor for how we see our own individual relationship with climate change. And you probably all heard some of these. This is the one kind of toolkit slide that I'll share. How can you actually make a difference? What can you do on a daily level There's actually a lot. These are very, very, very concrete recommendations, which are simple. And if you think about them, they're actually quite achievable. So reducing emissions. Well, what are emissions? Well, we're talking about every human on this planet is producing carbon, and their actions produce carbon. That carbon goes and emits into our atmosphere, and that contributes to the sort of trapping of that warm temperature in our, in our atmosphere and the ozone layer. That makes it kind of a rough situation. So reducing your emissions. How do you travel? How do you get from point A to point B? Take one or two less flights per year. I mean, nobody's flying right now, largely speaking. So it'll be interesting to see how things have changed from that. But now we're seeing things like electric cars, which are becoming incredibly popular. I have one. I love it. And by 2040, 2050, people are suggesting that majority of cars on the road are going to be EV cars. So it's coming. That's the thing, is we don't need a radical change here, because a lot of these things are already happening, but we just need more people to adopt them and get on board. That's the biggest thing. Saving energy, that's obviously another pretty easy one. I mean, think about it. You can probably live with a little bit less energy use, turning all the lights off when you leave a house. Don't put the AC on when you don't need it. You're really not going to miss that air conditioning for a couple hours. And this contributes to how you can lower your overall carbon footprint. I like to use the word living sustainably. It kind of goes hand in hand with how much you travel and how much energy you use. Classic example, what kind of cup are you using? Hopefully it's reusable, we need to move beyond the just, okay, let's not use plastic straws anymore. This is much larger than that. We kind of need to get rid of all these single-use plastics. And we live in, these capitalistic societies where if there was lower demand for something like a straw or a cup or these things, styrofoam, I mean, wow, I can't believe you're using styrofoam. These companies won't buy as many, and then hopefully there won't be as much production of them. So we're shifting the paradigm here, and that trickles all the way down to the individual consumer. You and I, we are the ones who actually can have a compounding effect if we all act on an individual basis. Low carbon diet, for years now, my wife and I, we say we got to eat less meat. There's nothing, I don't think there's nothing wrong with eating meat, by the way, but domestication of cattle is a massive contributor to methane production. So all that agriculture, these are, I almost said whales, where my one-track mind is here, cows, producing all that methane just from eating and farting. I mean, that's significant. I think that the actual number of, this is not a positive stat, but I think the number of cows outnumbers people. I think I read that statistic or saw it recently. I don't know if that's true, but if that is true, it's pretty eye-opening. So it's a lot of methane. So it's not even, okay, maybe we should only eat beef once per week, or we should try to eat less beef. Eat less beef, seriously, because that is a huge contributor to that CO2 production, trapping of that greenhouse gas. Where I come from here is, conservation. I'll get into a little bit of that in the next couple slides, share some positive anecdotes, what we're seeing in the ocean. But there is a large, huge movement right now from the private sector, working with conservation biologists like myself, and with governments, and as well as the public sector, to protect large expanses of our planet and our ocean. And that's incredible. So it's really, what cause do you want to attach yourself to? You should have a cause. Everybody on this planet who is in a position to support a cause, doesn't have to be monetarily, just on moral ethics and principles. What is your cause? Support that. And I think when we talk about climate change, of course, these other issues are really important when we're going to be thinking about access to water and food, which are going to be some of the effects that are going to get worse from climate change. But we got to protect this planet. I think that this planet here is showing some signs, and I don't want to anthropomorphize the planet too much or personify it, but she's got a temper right now. And we're seeing that, again, accepting the fact that, the planet is not responding in a great way to a lot of things that are happening right now. So supporting conservation efforts, talking about this with people. And I think that's really, really key. I want to have a planet that looks really beautiful for my daughter and my daughter's children one day. And, just 35, 36 days from now, not to date this talk too much, but very soon here, we're going to have another election. And local elections are just as important as the presidential ones, in my opinion, but get out there and vote. And vote. If you believe in this, you're not voting yet, you got to get out there and do it. So those are some of the really kind of quid pro quo quick tips. Our choices matter. They really do matter. Think about that. And I would encourage everybody to just meditate a little bit about these principles and how you can be different. And my favorite, the Lord of the Rings trilogy is just loaded with so many good one-liners that apply to the situation we're in right now, metaphorically speaking. Even the smallest person can change the course of future. And they use the word smallest here in reference to hobbits, which, Frodo and Sam bringing the ring to Mount Doom here. They're literally physically smaller than anyone else, but anybody can make a difference. And that's kind of how it's always been, by the way, guys, is that individuals have been a lot of the people who catalyze a lot of the really great success stories we love to talk about. And this is exactly what we got to do here. And then the third component, so, acceptance, and then just thinking about ownership, and then action is the third one. Let's take some action here. And this really goes hand in hand with, the ownership. Things like renewables have never been cheaper. Renewable energy from solar has never been cheaper than it is today. It's the cheapest form of energy, and it's actually going down in cost. So we have the greatest source of energy ever that will ever exist in our solar system that we can harvest for free, at least the capture of that and transferring that. That's just a wild phenomenon. So I'm really excited about that. And the biggest thing that we really do need to do as a society is to really lessen our reliance and honestly completely eliminate our reliance on fossil fuels, because those are also producing directly a lot of those emissions. And this, again, is happening. We are going to make that shift because it's already happening. You think about a company like Tesla and a lot of things that Elon's doing. Tesla, of course, wants to sell a lot of cars, but I was watching his recent seminar just the other day for Battery Day, and what he said is so true about why Tesla exists. And their top goal is to accelerate the transition to clean energy. That's incredible. And they're doing it through a sustainable business model. So that's amazing. And I think he even recently said that they're going to try and make an EV Tesla, a Tesla that's going to be $25,000, which would be really affordable for a lot of folks. So that's pretty incredible, if you ask me. So really, the train is moving. We are on the tracks right now, but I do think that it's just about trying to get more people pushing and pushing and pushing so we get there faster. A lot of the things that we've been seeing, these wildfires, the images of the floods, the droughts, these are not necessarily related to our behavior right now today, but they are the result and the effects of what we've been doing for the last 10 or 15 years plus. So what that means is that it's actually probably going to get a little bit worse in the next few years here. But we have this opportunity now for 2050. The next 10, 20 years is critical. How we behave and how we act is really going to affect what it looks like in future generations. Now, there are a lot of positive signs. We have to acknowledge that. I think I am an eternal, positive, optimistic person. I feel like I have to be. If we're not positive about these things, then the people who are afraid to be will never be inspired to embrace that culture as well. As it relates to climate change and taking action, supporting businesses, buying products that are smarter, better for our planet, we have the technology. We also know what the solutions are for this. We have had some of the smartest people in the world working on this. A lot of people much smarter than me who have provided the roadmap, who've done all the climate modeling, people who have been trudging down, into the poles and sticking probes into the sea ice and risking their lives to collect temperature data, putting thermometers in places, in crazy places, and seeing how things are changing all around our planet. And brave people who have been the initial ones to actually get out there and get up and stand up and raise their hand up in class and say, okay, guys, this is not good anymore. And I'm thinking about a lot of the people who were some of the early climate heroes, in the 80s, and 90s. And then today we're seeing, young people like Greta and all these other folks who are incredibly important catalysts to continue to help people on their path to acceptance. And then after we accept, only then can we really take that ownership and take action. So it's we really have a lot of great people who have worked hard on this. And if we didn't have those folks, imagine if we had no idea this was happening. I mean, that would be crazy. Okay. And then additionally, I think that there's a silver lining to everything. I do, including COVID-19, which we're experiencing right now. And man, we all hope this thing ends soon. But I do believe that this whole situation has put us inside and kept us away from people. And I think it's also shown us firsthand that we all need to think more about how we can have an impact individually. And the impact is important for all of us. And because of the current state of the world, I'm a capitalist. I think that it's an incredibly fair system. But no doubt about it, business and industrialization have got us to where we are now. That being said, I also think that they're going to be key to saving it. So I am enthused by corporations like Walmart, who came out just this past week, Climate Week, and saying that they want to be a carbon neutral company and that they're going to be making significant investments into resilience, going to be supporting conservation efforts, et cetera. That's great. And, that's where that's one path for where that kind of trickles down. And these countries, some of the biggest companies in the world, have the real opportunity to do that. So it's nice to see that. And it's not the phrase, it's about time. It is time now. So let's just keep moving forward. And we can't look at the past. We can only really look forward to what's happened. In terms of the ocean, I did want to share a couple really positive notes from my colleague, Dr. Duarte's recent paper on how we can save the oceans by 2050. So marine protected areas are really important ways for conserving fish and conserving biodiversity, threatened species, and it kind of allows these animals to populate and then spill over into other parts of the ocean. There's a big push right now for 30% protection of our oceans by 2030. And what we've seen in the last 20 years, but exponentially in the last 10 years, is an explosion in the percentage of marine protected areas that are being created, on our planet. So, you think about, well, we've had a lot of time to figure this whole climate change thing out. I actually disagree. We're just now at the point where we can, the last 10, 15 years, we're figuring it out and finally, hopefully going to get it right. So if the next 10, 20 years look like this graph here, that's a good thing. Okay. That's a really, really good thing. So that's a positive note I want to share. And also I want to mention that marine protected areas also create a buffer against climate change. If animals are going to be displaced or moved around or affected by temperature, having more of them and having strategic areas that might be very important for climate, like mangroves, seagrass habitat, having those areas protecting and being those carbon stocks, that's really critical. And again, on the marine protected area notion here, there's been look at the global spread of these, particularly in places where a lot of people aren't, but places that are going to be feeling the effects of climate change, island nations, for example. The darker colored circles here are the most recent adopted areas that have been set aside for a marine protected area, also known as MPA status. So we're seeing a lot more of those in the last only 8 years here, according to this graph. So we want this to continue. And if this pattern just in the ocean can mirror some of the other patterns in terrestrial conservation and climate change lobbying, et cetera, that's pretty awesome. And it kind of makes you wonder, well, you don't just have to get really depressed about whether or not your political party or political party that's in power necessarily believes in something if we have such a top down and bottom up growth in other sectors and spaces like we see here. So to conclude, I always like to meditate on the immensity of things, and there's a lot of other planets out there, might be other galaxies, who knows? Maybe there's other life out there. There probably is, by the way. How could there not be? But I like to just think about how big things are when we think about some of these problems. and then bring it all the way back, zooming all the way back down to, myself sitting in that chair and realizing that it's pretty cool that we have a chance to actually get this right. And this is a photo taken from the International Space Station of the Bahamas. This is obviously Cuba here, and then just to the sort of right-hand side of that, that's the Bahamas, the shallow, really kind of aqua-colored place I do a lot of work. It really means a lot to me. It's an incredible place for sharks, by the way, a completely protected area for sharks. And this was just taken a few months ago from space. So, there are a lot of things out there that we can do. And I hope that this talk was a little bit of an inspiration or catalyst to kind of inspire people to think about things a little bit more. And we got to not just think, we need to really do. So with that being said, throw my email up there. Anybody wants to ever reach out to me, and I will open it up to any questions. Tim, if you wanted to jump back in, and you can take it from there.
Awesome. Thank you so much for all this information. It's, we've had a little thread coming through today, and I mean, a little bit through the entire summit of it being about, the little actions you take and the impact you make in that way. And I think, even right before you, Kuda, was talking, we talked a little bit about the power of your economic vote, not just your political vote, but your economic vote, and how you can support, the companies out there that are doing incredible work like this. And so yeah, with what you're doing in your shark research, and how everything is like, how does this impact like what you're doing on the shark side? Like, does it create a better like how does the work that we do to improve the climate directly affect the sharks you work with?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I'll also flip it over and go the other direction after as well. Well, a lot of the animals, ocean animals that are living in places like coral reefs, which are on the equator, equatorial regions. Think about warm places that you want to go on vacation, and think about places like Australia and the Great Barrier Reef, which is incredible. They are feeling the brunt of this more than anything else in the ocean. Okay, and there's this phenomenon called coral bleaching, which you've maybe seen these photos of corals that lose their color. Corals are known for being these beautiful, vibrant, pastel neon paintings of underwater animals. And they are animals, by the way. Corals are animals. They're related to jellyfish, but they actually hold algae in their cells. So they have this incredible symbiotic relationship with algae, and the algae kind of give them food. The corals can also get food in other ways. But if it gets too warm, the algae say, peace, I'm out of here. And the algae leave, and that's how coral bleaching happens. The algae leave, and the corals has to fend for themselves. They have to do a lot. And then also the temperature itself is also not good for the actual structures of the coral. So animals that live in those areas, including sharks, they have two choices, if you want to frame it that way. Is you can leave the area and get out, or you can stay. And if you stay, you might be screwed, because if the coral reef dies, all the animals that it supports might also die, and then the sharks have no food to eat. So what we're seeing in some species is that they have nowhere to go, even though sharks can roam and do whatever they want. Some of them the coastal species may be affected, whereas other species like tiger sharks, species I work on a lot, that, oh my God, they're incredible. And Tim, I can't wait to show you these guys up close. And we've been talking about it for a couple of years now. You've helped us out with some stuff on the digital side, and I can't wait to repay the favor post-COVID. Let's make it happen. Tiger sharks, just incredible animals. What we're seeing is that they're actually quite adaptive. And as it relates to climate change, we've seen that these animals have moved quite a bit, actually. Some sort of new findings that aren't quite out there yet, but they are responding to moving warm bodies of water, and they're shifting their range in some cases. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? We don't actually really necessarily know, but some of them are definitely responding. Another little anecdote is that I do a bunch of work with my team up of Cape Cod and Nantucket in the summers. And this is kind of like tip top of North America, all this warm water rushes up from Florida in something called the Gulf Stream. Think about it like I-95 of the Atlantic Ocean. And it brings warm water naturally all the way up, and animals migrate and follow that. And sometimes you see coral reef fish popping off the coast of Rhode Island naturally because they get caught in the Gulf Stream or whatever. But this summer, off of Nantucket, my friends that I do a lot of fishing with, they're catching crazy animals they'd never seen before. And this year was a particularly warm year, so animals are getting displaced. That's one thing. What does that mean for top predators that are really important cleaners of the ecosystem? Well, we're still trying to figure that out. Actually, we don't necessarily know. To flip it, what are some of the positive effects of the research that we've done for identifying ways to contribute to reducing the effects of climate change? Again, an awesome example that I'm so excited to share is that work that we've done on tiger sharks in the Bahamas. We've put camera tags on them. We've put satellite tags on them. We've studied their movements, and what they've shown us is they've identified some really critical habitats that are going to be huge for reducing the effects of climate change. Places like seagrass habitats. Seagrass habitats are globally significant carbon stocks. Some island countries, they rely on seagrass to pull 20 to 30% of CO2 emissions down into the sediment, and they keep it. Seagrass is like underwater grass. They pull 20 to 30% of that, and they store it there for thousands of years, hundreds of thousands of years, millions of years. Incredible. So we need to protect that to make sure that stays there. And what is really cool about that is if you protect sharks and then you're allowed to study them, then we can actually see which habitats we need to protect. They're going to take us to those locations. So I think that's a really incredible example of save the sharks, save the humans. And think if we could do that in a number of different places. So that's exciting to me and our team. It's something I would love to connect with you about, actually, because it could be globally significant discovery. So it goes hand in hand. It really does.
Awesome. Yeah, and the other thing, kind of taking us back a little bit to the individual, you talked earlier about, kind of just turning the lights off at home, turning off, the energy flow. What are some other things we can do just like around our home to help combat this?
Yeah, definitely. Well, I mentioned the air conditioner, talking about installing lights that are more efficient. There are lights that are actually cheaper to install. I forget what they're called, but we use them. I should know the answer to this, but they use like 90% less energy, and they produce more watts of light. Incredible. Go to the Home Depot and buy those.
LED.
Like, yeah, LEDs. Yeah, that's exactly right. LEDs. It's like, why aren't these things the only thing that exists in the marketplace right now? And it's probably just because all those other companies don't want their products to become obsolete, but let's just make that change by voting with our dollar, So using those LEDs, a lot of different appliances now are energy certified, and you can find the washing machine and the TV and all these things that are going to be a lot better for that, without a doubt. And then, really, when you open that refrigerator, what do you got in your fridge? What kind of things are you buying? Like I said, we really I love eating meat. I love nothing more than a good burger, but we got to eat less of those. So that's got to be like the one treat that we reward ourselves for, in every rare instance now, I think. So those are a couple of the examples that I would say, around the house, but even, things like lawnmower. This is amazing, actually. So I used to mow lawns as a kid, when I was, growing up on the block.
Yeah.
I got charged $20 per lawn, which is a lot back in the 90s, I think. But I use gasoline. We use gasoline, put in our weed whacker. We use gasoline, put it in our lawnmower, and I did like 10 lawns, per week sometimes. So I would go to the gasoline store at the, what do we call them? Gas stations. See, I drive a Tesla now, so I don't even go to gas station. I guess I don't think about that anymore. Gasoline stores. Wow. Go to the, pump, and I would have to fill up like 13 of these things. Just to power a lawnmower to cut the lawn for an aesthetic. So because we wanted our lawns to look good. Well, what's pretty interesting now is they have electronic lawnmowers. Incredible. Like, I don't have a lawn that's big enough to justify buying one, but one day maybe I will. And I can't wait to plug in my lawnmower. Things like that.
Yeah, it seems like a solar lawnmower would be a great idea.
Totally. And I can't wait to like have solar panels, on our house. It's literally the cheapest way to do it. And then you create so much surplus. My father-in-law just installed an array at his house. You feed the grid. It's pretty amazing. And yeah, so those are some of the kind of simple things that we can do around the house for sure.
That's awesome. Well, hey man, I really appreciate you coming on here and sharing this story with us. It's really exciting to see, that like, yes, we all have so much more to do, but there is progress being made, and there is, if we can get behind that progress, like we can really affect change. So, yeah, once again, you guys, he gave his email earlier. You can connect with him at beneaththewaves.org. Anything else you want to say before we wrap up, or?
Yeah, I mean, the last thing I would say is just that everybody out there who has been enlightened to anything from this summit, this conference, shine that on, because I think some of us in society are living in fear now about wanting to take a stand or talk about how we feel about things and support the things we want to support. But it's the folks who can actually shine that light out are the ones that are going to convince and give permission to all those others to actually do it themselves.
Yeah.
So shine on.
Awesome. What a great way to end this. Well, guys, we'll be back after lunch. Go enjoy your lunch. Don't eat beef. That's for lunch, And
Yeah.
we'll see you this afternoon. Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks, guys. Thank you, Tim. Have a good one, everybody.
You too. Bye.